it's AK here, and today we're talking about publishing. Okay, publishing is just a fancy word for printing multiple pages onto a PDF, so that other people can view your draft without needing to have Vectorworks in their own machine. While you can export your whole drawing into one single big sheet, it makes more sense to have multiple pages referencing different segments of your drawing. So a good example would be you could have one plan for the ground, another one for the overhead, and another one for the side elevation view. Once you get a good grasp of how to create one sheet layer, it kind of just repeats itself to get the other sheets done. And you can just make your adjustments to each sheet as you see fit. So the whole point is about getting one sheet to work, and then we can take it from there. So jumping into Vectorworks, you can think of one sheet view as one page of your PDF. And you can find all of these things within the navigation tool palette over here. The first one is classes and then design layers, and the one after that, the border, is the sheet layers. Typically, I would suggest 3 sheets for the export. So like I said, one for the ground, one for the overhead, and one for the side elevation. Sometimes in more complex draft situations, you need to have an extra sheet for trussing and maybe a facade. The key thing about sheets though is they are tagged to the page size. So it's a very good habit to make sure that you have the correct page size selected and your settings are all in order before you start populating the sheet. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to head over to my sheet layers palette over here, and I'm going to right click and click on new. You get a pop-up that says create new sheet layer. I'm going to just call this sheet number 1, and I'm going to call this sheet my ground plan. And I want to make sure that edit properties after creation is checked, and I'm going to press OK, and you get the edit sheet layers pop up like this. Same sheet number, no change, ground plan, stacking order, all these can stay the same as they were from the previous window. Raster rendering DPI, if you are rendering a picture or a simulation for a client to see, or maybe camera angles for references, then maybe a better raster rendering DPI would make sense. But for black and white or simple ground plans and grid plans like we're doing over here, a DPI of 72 is just fine. The origin is going to stay as X0 and Y0, and then the important thing is we need to go into page setup to change the details of the page. In here, we want to make sure that the pages are one horizontal and one vertical. And we want to make sure that we choose a size that's unavailable in a printer. Because unless you've got a printer that can do large format printing, you probably don't have the sizes in your printer at home. I'm going to check this, and I'm going to set my page size to ISO A2. And you will see that it switches over to a width of 594 mm and a height of 420 mm. This will be a landscape layout. What I want is a portrait layout, so I'm going to change this to 420 by 594 mm and hit OK. And when we come back over here, you just hit OK again, and you can see that the sheet layer has been created. And all we need to do over here is double click on the sheet layer to jump into the paper space. And you can see that when I zoom out, this is what an ISO A2 page would look like in portrait. It's empty at the moment, but we just want to make sure that we have the right things laid out so that we put in the correct information the way we want it. Like I said earlier, it is not very difficult to create multiple sheets for the different things that you want visible. But if you can have one sheet that is done up properly with the settings the way you want it, it makes more sense to duplicate that one template instead of creating each sheet from scratch. So now we move on to the title block. The title block is a border around your page, which usually includes information like your project name, your designer's name, design firm's name, the draft date, your scale, and even revisions if there are revisions for your draft. There are many different kinds of title blocks. The one that I like to use is the Spotlight title block. I personalize it a little bit to fit my needs. You don't have to, but I will still show you how to modify some of the settings within the title block. So adding a title block is very easy. You just head over to the Dimensions and Notes tool palette over here. Scroll down and look for title block border. Click on this, and when you mouse over your paper space, you can see that a border appears. Click once to insert, and the title block border preferences appears. Here you can pick a style. You can leave it unstyled, or if you're like me, you can use the Spotlight style. I'm gonna change this over to the Spotlight title block over here and press OK. Once it's done settling in, you will see the border appear around your page space, and we can zoom in over here to take a look at what data is contained within the title block. Click on the title block, and in your object info palette, you can go to title block border settings. And from here, under project data and sheet data, you have just about all the information that is displayed on the title block. Sometimes you have certain categories which aren't visible on the title block. So that would mean that you either need to edit the layout of your title block, or you need to use something which contains the data that you want. For me, this one has everything that I need. So what I'm going to do first under project data is I'm going to name this my first draft. I'm going to leave the other project name and project address slots empty, and I'm going to change the venue to Gateway Black Box, which is this venue. Under total number of sheets, I want to make sure I check this box over here. And what Vectorworks will do now is it will count the total number of title block borders you have in your drawing, and then it will take that to be your total number of pages. Then we head over to sheet data, and in here we make sure that the sheet title is ground plan. I'm not going to add in multiple titles over here. I will click on today's date to change the date to today's date, and I'm going to leave the scale as is for now because there's nothing on the sheet layer yet. And I'm going to change all of these to empty slots, and I'm just going to put in my name over here as drawn by, and hit OK, and the title block border will edit accordingly. Okay, a footnote over here is you can modify the contents of your title block border, and you can do that by selecting the title block, right clicking on it and clicking on edit, and you'll get this little pop-up that asks you whether you want to change the settings, which is the project settings that you changed just now, whether you want to change the layout or you want to get into the manager. What we want to do is click on title block layout over here and press OK. You'll get a little warning that says that this current title block border is by a style. If you modify it, you are going to be modifying the style. So the workaround for this would be to duplicate the style first within the resource manager before you start messing around with it. So I'm just going to click OK. And you can see that the title block border opens in the edit window. And here you can kind of move things around however you see fit. But most of the time it's already been laid out pretty neatly, so I wouldn't mess around with it unless you absolutely know what you're doing. One thing that I do is I'm in the habit of adding my badge to the right hand side of the PDFs that I create. So that's basically drawing in a circle and using the attribute palette to insert in my logo. We don't need that for this particular demonstration, so I'm going to just delete this, and I'm going to click on exit title block layout to go back into my sheet view. So what's missing over here now is you need to be able to see your drawing on the sheet layer, and you do that using this thing known as a viewport. And viewports are basically windows with which you see your draft on the sheet layer. And each viewport can have its own render settings, its own perspective. So you can have one viewport on a left side view, you can have another viewport on a plan view, and you can have one in an isometric view if you need to. They also can have their own class and layer settings for visibility. So you can show something on one viewport and have it hidden on another viewport while it's grayed out on the third viewport. And all this doesn't affect your drafting as a whole. So to create a viewport, we head over to the view drop down over here and click on create viewport. You get this window that appears. I'm gonna name this viewport my ground, and I'm gonna make sure it's created on the layer that is layer 1 ground plane. I don't want a drawing label, I find them rather annoying. And I'm gonna leave these as is, and under layers I'm gonna make sure that I have my production deck, seating, and venue turned on, and I'm gonna hit OK. And under classes, I want to make sure that my container classes for all elements on the ground are turned on. So this is about right, and I'm just gonna hit OK. For the scale, I'm gonna leave it as a 1:50 for now, and detail level is gonna be medium. Yes, I want my planar objects displayed. Over in the display settings, I want to make sure that my view is a top plan view and that the background render is a wireframe. I'm going to leave the rest of the settings untouched, and I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that the drawing gets opened up through a viewport on my sheet layer. Of course, you can see that the viewport is eating into my title block border, and perhaps it's not sized the right way, but that's okay, it still fits on the page, so that is a good start. We can fix the overlapping sections with a quick step, so we can get into that once we center the viewport on the middle of the sheet. I'm just gonna put it over here. Okay. So once you have a viewport on your sheet layer, you can crop and modify your viewport. If you want to hide or show the different layers and classes that are in your drawing, you can click on the viewport and you can modify it in your object info palette. So if you want a different layer display, just click on layers over here and you toggle the layers that you want visible. So if you want different classes to be displayed, the idea is the same. Click on classes and just toggle the layers and classes that you want on and off. If you click on the viewport and you do a right click, you get this pair of options over here, edit annotations and edit crop. So what we want to look at first is edit crop, and in here you can just select a simple shape and you can draw in the shape to crop your viewport within the shape, and you hit exit viewport crop, and that will crop your viewport for you. An important thing to note though is if you try to crop the same viewport with two different shapes, Vectorworks doesn't allow it. You get a little pop-up that says you can only have one crop object. So be sure to only have one shape within your viewport when you're trying to crop it. As for the edit annotations option, this is very important and very useful because what it does is it allows you to draw dimensions within your viewport and not mess up your drafting as a whole. So in here, I can select my constraint linear dimension and I can draw in dimensions for my stage. Again, holding shift to make sure that it is a straight line. Okay, So the important thing to note is that if you try to use the constrained linear dimensions on the viewport itself, so if let's say I try to measure this, what's going to happen is you will get the dimension of the paper space on the sheet layer, not the dimension of your drawing. So it's an important distinction to make note. When you are trying to provide dimensions on your sheet layers, be sure to do it on the edit annotations page and not on the sheet layer itself. So one other thing that I would like to do while I'm over here is when you create a dimension on Vectorworks, Vectorworks automatically puts that into its own class. So it's the dimension class. So something that I like to do is I like to edit this class. And when the edit class window opens, I will usually use a pen color of blue and check use at creation. And what this will do is it will allow me to draw in my dimensions, and the dimensions automatically get drawn in blue. So it helps to differentiate the lines of a dimension line from a generic line or a wall or whatever you might have. So once I'm done, I'm just going to click exit viewport annotation, and you can see that we have one working sheet ready to go. Since I have one copy that is good to go, the next step would be to duplicate this in my sheet layers menu. And I'm just going to call the second one my grid plan. And in my grid plan, I'm going to change the layers that are visible. So this one is going to show my production overhead, and the production deck is going to be grayed out, and I want to also gray out my seating. And I'm going to hit OK, and you can see that this is my production overhead plan. I also want to make sure that I go in and I edit annotations and I turn off or delete the dimensions that I drew on my ground plan. Now we can see that we have a working grid plan, and I'm going to duplicate this one more time, and this time I'm going to call it a side elevation plan. And I am going to change my view from a top plan to a left side view. And what this will do is it will automatically shift the perspective to the left side perspective of the drawing. And as you can see, it doesn't fit within my sheet. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit the sheet. And I'm going to change this one to a landscape orientation. And you can see that the title block also modifies to fit. And I'm going to shift this in over here and edit crop and just resize this gently. Okay, and reason why we provide a side elevation to a production drawing is so that we can go in, edit the annotations, and provide a dimension on the side, so that way people would know what the trim height of the different elements within your drawing are meant to be. And if you want to give a height clearance, just so that we know what is the lowest element on the stage, you know that it is a 3-meter high clearance from the ground. We can also specify that the stage is 8 meters high. And when I'm done, I'm just going to exit my viewport annotation, and you can see that we have a left side view. With all this done, there's only one more step to do before we can publish this sheet layer or series of sheet layers, and we need to provide a legend to tell the reader what it is that you are looking at. So off the bat, I know that these are Clay Paki X-Core Beam 300s, but the casual reader is not going to know that. So for this, we need an equipment summary tool. And this can be found in your lighting tool palette over here. So click on this, and I'm just going to click anywhere within my sheet layer and click again to give an angle, and the equipment summary key window will appear. So this tool has evolved a lot over the past couple of years. It started out as a lighting summary tool, and now it's pretty much summarizing every symbol within the drawing. If you look under used equipment symbols, you can see that there is a truss, there is the chain master hoist, there is even an audio speaker. I'm going to stick with the lighting devices for this legend. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to start by adding in my conventional fixtures, which would be my source 436 over here. So once you have the symbol selected, click on the little arrow to push it over to the right side. I'm going to also add in the Rama Fresnel and the 4-panel barn door. And then I'm going to add in my Ghibli, the Aura, and the X-Core beam. So once I have all these on the items and elements to display section, you can hit OK, and you can see that the legend generates. But at first glance, you do notice that it doesn't look quite right yet. We'll get into that in a bit, but let's go back into the object info palette and build this to clean this up a little bit better. I like to separate my conventional fixtures from the non-conventional fixtures. So what I do for this is under other elements, I will add a column break, and I will put this column break between my two sets of fixtures. And then right at the bottom over here, I will add another column break, and I will add in a color summary. A color summary is very useful because it lets the reader get a very quick count of the number of colors used in your drawing. Though for this, you do need to make sure that you check show color list and show color swatches, and then you can hit OK, and you can see that my legend is almost ready to go. You'll notice that the information over here appears as a line instead of text, and that's actually because of a text size problem. So I'm not sure whether this has been fixed on your version of Vectorworks. It's very odd for me because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But what I usually do to fix it is I scroll down to format body text, and I usually change this to millimeters, and I will set this to be 300 millimeters and press OK, and that usually puts me at a good place for sizing. If I want to get it to fit a little bit better, I will downsize it a little bit more, maybe 200 millimeters, and that looks like a better size. We also want to make sure that the show key title is checked, and you can see over here it says symbol key. I'm going to change this to legend, but as you can see, there is no title visible. Again, it's because of the font size over here. So I'm going to change this one to a font size of 300 millimeters. And there you go. I also have a habit of making my border for the title block be a double line. It's a bit of a design preference, and usually I will place this somewhere around here to complete my drawing. Of course, you can see that the width of my legend over here is not too good. To make it fit a little bit better, what I normally do is I turn off my wattages, and I also change my columns and counts width. So you can see that by increasing the column width, you can pretty much take up the whole page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a column width of 80, and that fits everything into a nice little box over here. So we're just going to put it over here, and there you go. You have a working legend on your first sheet layer. You can also see that the colors are displayed over here. If you have fancier colors and you had the show color swatches checked in the options, you will see a full list of colors over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to bring it over to my other sheet layers, and I'm just going to paste it in over here. And one more over here. And there you go. We have 3 sets of sheets with a different viewport and a different thing visible on each sheet. One last thing that I would do before publishing this is I would want to label my viewports. So you know that the first one is the ground viewport, and we know that this one is the grid viewport, and this last one over here is my side elevation. It helps to keep things organized if you label everything. Right now it's only 3 different sheets and 3 different viewports, so it's not that bad, but it can get very messy very quickly if you are doing something more complex. So be sure to do that before you publish your work. With everything neatly labeled and organized, check that you have your viewports and sheet layers organized and ready to go. And the only thing that I have left over here to sort out is, if you look at my sheet layers, you'll notice that the scale still reads as a 1:1. So that is a quick fix. All I have to do is click on the title block border, head into the border settings, and under scale just click on update scale and press OK, and that will update the scale for me. Same thing for the other sheet layers. And now we can publish our work. So to publish, you gotta head over to File and look for Publish. You can do an export and export each sheet as a PDF, but the Publish option allows you to compile your many pages into one big document. So it is a smoother workflow if you have multiple sheets like I do over here. So click on Publish, and a Publish window will appear. Over here, it's a pretty straightforward process. Just select the sheets that you want and click on the arrow to push them over to the Publish selection over here. Check that they're all set to PDF and check that they are all in color, and then all you have to do is click on Publish, and you'll get the little option that asks you if you want to save this set of sheets for a future export. If you think you're going to be re-exporting the same thing over and over again, you can save this as a set. Otherwise, you can just leave it alone and head over to export. And what Vectorworks will do is it will ask you to label your export, and I'm going to call this 2024 my first draft ISO A2. Check that it's a PDF and hit save. So it'll take a moment, and once it's done, the PDF should open within your computer. And you can see that I have 3 pages over here, and the 3 pages correspond to the 3 sheet layers that I prepared on Vectorworks. And as a rule of thumb, please make sure you check your work before you send it out to anybody. So that brings us to a place where we have an almost full drawing, and the drawing is also in a state where it can be shared with other people. All that's left to do is add in video elements and maybe an LED wall and cameras maybe. This venue though doesn't have any projectors. We'll still try to touch on that before we continue building the venue. But all that is in the next one. So that's all for now. Bye.